If you are going to the gym regularly, eating what you believe is a good diet, sleeping what feels like enough, and still not growing at the rate your effort deserves, then the reason is almost certainly not one catastrophic mistake you are making once a week. It is a collection of small, daily, invisible errors that each seem insignificant in isolation, but compound together across weeks and months into a cumulative deficit of muscle-building stimulus that explains exactly why your physique has barely changed despite genuine consistent effort. And this video is going to identify every single one of those daily mistakes with the precision of the research that exposed them, so you can eliminate them starting today. The first daily mistake is how you start your morning, specifically the chronic cortisol spike that most people voluntarily generate within the first 60 seconds of waking up by reaching for their phone and immediately exposing their nervous system to emails, notifications, social media comparisons, and news. And this behavior is not just a productivity problem, it is a direct muscle building problem because cortisol and testosterone are in a continuous hormonal competition for receptor binding throughout your body. And the research on diurnal cortisol patterns shows that cortisol is naturally at its highest point in the first 30 to 45 minutes after waking in what is called the cortisol awakening response. And voluntarily amplifying this already peaked cortisol level by introducing psychological stress through phone use creates a morning hormonal environment that is measurably more catabolic than it would be if you spent those first 30 minutes in low stimulation activity like hydrating, walking, or eating breakfast. And a study published in Psychoneuroendocrinology confirmed that psychological stress exposure during the cortisol awakening response window produces a significantly larger and more prolonged cortisol elevation compared to the same stress encountered later in the day, meaning the phone habit you have normalized as harmless morning routine is creating a daily hormonal environment that is working directly against your muscle-building goals before you have eaten a single gram of protein. The second daily mistake is your protein distribution. And this is where most people who believe they are eating enough protein are actually generating a fraction of the muscle protein synthesis they think their intake is producing. Research by Norton, Lehman, and colleagues on leucine threshold and muscle protein synthesis shows that each meal must contain a minimum of 2 to 3 grams of leucine, the specific branched chain amino acid that acts as the primary trigger for mTORC1 activation, to maximally stimulate a muscle protein synthesis response. And below this leucine threshold, the synthesis response is blunted regardless of total protein content, meaning 10 grams of protein spread across your breakfast does not stimulate muscle protein synthesis at all. 20 grams may reach the threshold depending on the protein source, and 35 to 50 grams maximally stimulates the response with no additional benefit above that ceiling per meal. And the practical implication is devastating for people who skip breakfast, eat a light lunch, and then consume the majority of their daily protein in a large evening meal because they are generating one strong muscle protein synthesis pulse per day instead of the 3 to 5 that research shows maximizes daily anabolic response. And this distribution error means their body is spending the majority of each day in a net muscle protein breakdown state despite hitting their total daily protein target. The third daily mistake is sitting for extended periods without movement breaks, and the research on sedentary behavior and insulin sensitivity has direct muscle building implications that most people are completely unaware of. A study from Maastricht University showed that prolonged sitting without movement breaks reduces insulin sensitivity in skeletal muscle tissue within hours. And insulin sensitivity is not just a metabolic health marker, it is a direct determinant of how efficiently your muscle cells absorb glucose and amino acids from your bloodstream, meaning that the person who sits at a desk for 8 hours and then goes to the gym is training with significantly reduced nutrient uptake capacity in their muscle tissue compared to the person who takes a 5 to 10 minute walk every hour throughout the day. And the fix is not complicated. Set an alarm every 60 minutes and walk for 5 minutes. Do 10 bodyweight squats or push-ups, or simply stand and move, because this low-intensity movement throughout the day maintains skeletal muscle insulin sensitivity in a way that has direct and measurable effects on post-workout protein and glucose uptake into the muscle tissue you are trying to grow. The fourth daily mistake is chronic underhydration and its effect on muscle protein synthesis, which is a connection the research has established clearly, but that almost no fitness content communicates accurately. A study published in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research found that even mild dehydration of 2% of body weight reduced strength performance by up to 6% and power output by a similar margin, but more relevant to muscle growth is research showing that intracellular hydration status directly influences the rate of muscle protein synthesis, because protein synthesis is a biochemical process that occurs in an aqueous cellular environment, and the enzymatic reactions driving it are sensitive to the concentration of reactants, which is directly affected by cellular water content. Meaning, the chronically underhydrated person is not just performing worse in their training sessions, they are running their muscle protein synthesis machinery at reduced efficiency throughout the entire recovery period between sessions. The fifth and most psychologically rooted daily mistake is the inconsistency pattern that most people never recognize in themselves because it does not feel like inconsistency. It feels like life getting in the way. It feels like reasonable exceptions. It feels like one missed meal, or one poor sleep, or one skipped session is trivially inconsequential. And the research on consistency and hypertrophic outcomes confirms that this perception is the most expensive cognitive error a natural lifter can make. Because muscle building is a cumulative biological process where the daily anabolic signal must remain consistently above a minimum threshold across weeks and months to produce continuous structural adaptation. And every day where your protein intake falls below your target, every night where your sleep falls below 7 hours, every session where you skip or significantly reduce volume, is a day where the cumulative anabolic signal drops below the threshold required for net muscle protein accretion, and these below threshold days do not cancel out with above threshold days in a simple averaging equation. They interrupt the continuous molecular signaling cascade that drives muscle growth, require the adaptive process to restart from a lower stimulus baseline, and produce an outcome over 12 weeks that is measurably worse than the outcome achieved by someone with lower peak performance but higher daily consistency, which is exactly what the research on training adherence confirms when it shows that consistency rate is the single strongest predictor of long-term hypertrophic outcomes above every other training and nutrition variable combined.